Britain's Supreme Court decided to pronounce legally as a formal definition on what is a woman. And the legal definition is that someone who's born biologically female. Could this be a step in the right direction? You and I need to talk about this. I'm Marcus Peter. So, Britain's Supreme Court, they ruled the legal definition of a woman is someone born biologically female.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
Now, the motivation for this definition came about by growing concerns. And the concerns were really over the case of legal clarity, because that then overflowed into concerns of sex-based rights and the protections of those rights, safeguarding vulnerable populations, because the origination of this issue came in Scotland in 2018. Feminist campaigners were challenged with new policies that allowed individuals to legally self-identify as whatever gender they chose without biological verification. In fact, it was completely left up to the individuals to identify at will. And so the activists, these feminists, particularly women's rights advocates, they argued if you replace biological sex with gender self-identification, what you're effectively going to do is threaten hard-won legal protections that feminists and women have fought for in numerous areas. And so some of the areas that they cited were things like sports, prisons, healthcare, and public services. And we're seeing this problem globally. Wherever gender ideology has permeated, women's rights have suffered. This is not just a conjecture, it's factually true. But I want to highlight this particular case in Britain here. So the Scottish government attempted to expand the legal definition of woman to include biological males who identify as female. So shortlist for political office, public sector hiring. So you're looking at jobs, you're looking at certain placements in academia, but you're also looking at sports. All of a sudden your identification, your self-identification was all you needed to win the right to be considered for those positions. And so feminist opponents argued that this shift was a violation of the original intent of things like equality laws, because now biological women from historical discrimination were suffering. The marginalization was happening all over again. The Supreme Court of Britain emphasized sex-specific rights. And this is what's guaranteed by the Equality Act of 2010. Clear, objective criteria. They anchored the legal definition of woman in biological fact. And so the court even warned that if you don't do that, then these important legal protections could be rendered incoherent and unenforceable. And that's what the ruling was about. The reaffirmation of biological reality so that they could preserve the integrity of laws, so that discrimination of women could stop, safety could be enforced, and fairness could be preserved. I mean, seriously. We've been talking about this for a while now, and women, if you're listening to this, you should be at the forefront of standing up for your own rights, because it's your rights that are at stake here. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, when she came out very clearly about her reasons for speaking out on sex and gender issues, she was lambasted, even by the actors and producers of the film of her franchise. But this is what she had to say. When you throw open the doors of bathrooms and changing rooms to any man who believes or feels he's a woman, you open the door to any and all men who wish to come inside. That is the simple truth. She's right. I don't care how much you identify as a particular reality. Biologically, the reality hasn't changed. Martina Navratilova, I mentioned her with regards to the fencing story, the story of the female fencer who was forced to fight a male opponent and decided to opt out of it. But this is what she had to say. It is insane and it's cheating. I'm happy to address a transgender woman in whatever form she prefers, but I would not be happy to compete against her. It would not be fair, because biological realities are not so simply erased by medical intervention. In fact, medical intervention has and will always have its limits. Roger Scruton, philosopher and conservative thinker, writes this: the utopian mind is remarkable not merely for being detached from reality, but also taking a certain pride in consciously rejecting that reality. That's the problem we're having. No matter how much an ideology proposes things, it will never be able to reject the objective truth of reality. And the reality is, the biological sex that a person is born with is their biological reality until they die. No amount of medical intervention will be able to rewrite that genetic code. And that's factual. The modern world is full of old Christian virtues that have gone mad. That's the problem we're having right now. We've taken charity, perverted it to social justice in the modern sphere, and told ourselves that this is the new face of virtue. That is simply not the case. G.K. Chesterton himself would beg to differ. So in the face of all of this, what ought we to do? Well, Ross Douthat, in The Decadent Society, wrote this: the problem for secular progressivism is not that its ideals are unpopular, but that they are increasingly incoherent. The solution is simple. Return to reason. Look at reality and understand this. The more we try to fight reality, the more reality fights back. There's a certain stubbornness to reality that will never bend and yield to even the most perverted, twisted ideals of the human mind that's embraced untoward ideologies. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, warning to the West, he said this: the ideology of progressivism that demands the denial of simple truths will inevitably collapse before the stubbornness of reality. So if you and I love the women in our life, and if you and I love life, then we have to love reality as it is. Take a look at nature. Understand the objective truth that we are servants to. And let's uphold that. Let's teach that. Because, my friends, if we do that, then we have adhered to natural law, and we begin again the process of creating structures for human flourishing. That's how we move forward. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Peter.